There are moments when your body speaks before your mind even has a chance. A knot in the stomach, a sudden rise in your voice, a withdrawal you can't explain. All of it happens before a single thought crosses your awareness. And later, you wonder, why did I act like that? The answer might be older than your thoughts. It might be in your nervous system. It might be in your history, because before you ever learn to analyze, justify, or explain, your body learned to react. That's what Ivan Pavlov began to uncover over a century ago. Though he worked with dogs, bells, and saliva, what he revealed was something profoundly human. We are conditioned before we are conscious. You didn't choose every part of you. Imagine this. A child hears the sound of footsteps approaching down the hallway. If those footsteps are followed by a loving hug, her body relaxes. But if they often lead to shouting or punishment, her heart starts racing before the door even opens. That child grows up. She may forget those specific moments, but her body doesn't. Now, as an adult, someone raises their voice, not even in anger, and she tenses up. Not because of the moment itself, but because of what her nervous system remembers. This is the body reacting before the mind understands. We tend to believe we are rational beings, that we act based on logic, thought, reflection, but more often than not, especially in emotional situations, it's not your mind driving the car. It's your body, operating on patterns it learned long ago. The wisdom and burden of the nervous system. Your nervous system is brilliant at keeping you safe. It learned fast. It connected sights, sounds, smells, and tones with what to expect next. It created shortcuts to help you survive. The problem is it never got the memo that you're no longer 5 years old. So now when your partner criticizes you, or your boss raises an eyebrow, or your child pulls away, your body floods with old reactions. You may freeze, you may lash out, you may shut down, and then your thinking mind kicks in. After. It tries to make sense of it. It builds a story, finds justifications, or blames someone. But the truth is, your body had already decided how to respond. This is not a flaw. It's human. It's a sign that your life has left marks, some protective, some limiting. But they are not destiny. Recognizing the moment before the moment, the path to change doesn't begin in the intellect. It begins with awareness. To pause and ask yourself, am I reacting to now or to then? The next time you feel your body respond, before your thoughts catch up, try this. Place a hand on your chest. Breathe. Don't try to fix it. Just notice. That's how healing begins. Not by forcing the body to stop reacting, but by slowly teaching it that it no longer has to. There's a quiet power in understanding that your reactions are not your weakness. They are echoes of something once true. But you're not that child anymore. You're not in that room anymore. And now, as an adult in the present, you have something you didn't have back then. Choice, Pavlov, the dog, and you. What can a bell teach us about human behavior? Pavlov's experiment explained in a symbolic and accessible way. Imagine this scene. A bell rings. A dog begins to salivate. There's no food in sight. No one fed him. Just the sound of a bell. And still, his body reacts as if dinner is coming. Why? Because the dog learned, not through thinking, not through language. He learned through association. The bell had been paired with food so many times that eventually the bell became the signal. His body responded to the symbol, not the substance. This is what Pavlov discovered in his experiments in the early 1900s. And it changed the way we understand behavior forever. But more importantly, you are not so different from the dog, because you too have your bells, your invisible bells, a certain tone of voice, a sigh from your partner, the smell of your father's old aftershave, a silence that lasts just a second too long. These are the bells in your life, tiny triggers that awaken massive responses inside you. And just like the dog, your body doesn't wait for logic. It reacts. It prepares. It anticipates. You might feel rejected, angry, anxious, or small, and not fully understand why. That's because your system isn't reacting to the moment itself, but to what it once meant. The truth is, many of us live in a world of symbolic bells, unaware that we're salivating, crying, or suffering, to sounds that have nothing to do with now. The cost of not knowing. The danger isn't in reacting. We all do. The danger is in not realizing what we're reacting to. Think of how many arguments, misunderstandings, and regrets come from a conditioned reaction. Someone says something neutral, but the bell rings. Your heart races. You feel dismissed. You raise your voice. You defend yourself. And hours later you ask, why did I get so upset? Because the moment rang a bell from your past. Because the person in front of you sounded like someone from years ago. Because your body mistook the present for the past. This is not about blame. It's about compassionate awareness. When you understand that you're responding to a bell, not to reality, you can begin to reclaim your response. You can't unring the bell, but you can change what it means. Here's the hopeful part. The same way the dog learned that the bell means food, he could unlearn it too. With repetition, patience, and new experiences, the bell can lose its power. The reaction can fade, and so can yours. That anxious tone that once made you feel unworthy, the sharp silence that used to make you shrink, they don't have to rule you forever. You can teach your body that not every bell is danger, that not every silence is rejection, that not every raised voice means you're about to be hurt. This doesn't happen overnight. It's not a quick fix, but it's a real path. The most powerful thing Pavlov showed us is not how predictable we are, but how trainable we are. And that goes both ways. You were trained once, often without your consent. Now in your maturity you have the power to retrain yourself with kindness, with presence, and with the quiet wisdom that you are no longer the dog in the lab. You are the one holding the bell, the pain that conditions. How trauma shapes our emotional reactions. The past keeps pressing invisible buttons in our present. You don't remember every wound, but your body does. Sometimes all it takes is a word, a look, a slight change in someone's tone, and suddenly you're not just upset, you're flooded. Tight chest, lump in the throat, a heat rising inside you that feels much bigger than the moment deserves. That's not overreaction, that's overconditioning, and most of it comes from pain. Pavlov showed us how repetition builds reflexes, but what he didn't fully explore, and what modern psychology reveals, is this: pain accelerates conditioning. Especially when it's emotional, especially when we're young, when pain teaches too quickly. Picture this: a child reaches out for comfort and is ignored, once, twice, 10 times. Eventually, the child stops reaching, not because they stopped needing love, but because their nervous system learned reaching leads to pain. That learning becomes a pattern, a protective reflex. And decades later, that same child, now an adult, may pull away from intimacy not out of choice, but out of a reflex they don't even realize they have. Emotional pain doesn't just hurt. It teaches. It wires the brain. It programs the body to respond faster, stronger, and often with a distorted sense of danger. Emotional reflexes are harder to see. If someone flinches at a loud sound, we understand. It's a reflex. But if someone shuts down when they feel misunderstood, or gets aggressive when they feel dismissed, we call them difficult, overly sensitive, too emotional. But they're not reacting to now. They're reacting to then, to old emotional injuries that were never given space to heal. And that's what makes this kind of conditioning so powerful and so invisible. It hides behind personality. It disguises itself as just the way I am, but it's not who you are. It's what your pain trained you to become. Pain-based patterns are protective until they're not. The problem is that what once protected you starts to limit you. The silence that kept you safe now keeps you lonely. The anger that made you feel strong now pushes people away. The distance you created to survive now makes you feel unseen. These patterns didn't come from weakness. They came from survival. And the fact that you're still here, despite what you've lived, is proof of your resilience. But now the question is no longer, how do I protect myself? The real question is, how do I free myself? Becoming aware of the buttons. Think of your emotional reactions as buttons. You didn't install them. Life did. Family, school, early heartbreaks, betrayals, abandonment. Each one left a mark. Each one wired your system to react. And every time someone unknowingly touches one of those buttons, you respond, quickly, intensely. Not because you chose to, but because your pain chose for you. Healing begins the moment you start identifying your buttons, not to judge them, but to gently ask, who put this here? Is this still protecting me, or is it just repeating the past? Your pain trained you, but it doesn't own you. And the beautiful truth of emotional maturity is this: you can keep your history without being ruled by it, because every painful reaction holds a hidden invitation to pause, to notice, to reclaim the space between the trigger and the response. That space is where healing lives. That space is where freedom begins. When the adult reacts like a child, why do our overreactions reveal who we are? The inner child still making decisions in adult life. You've lived through so much. You've built a career, a family, perhaps even survived divorce, loss, or illness. You've made hard choices, learned lessons, carried others. And yet, in one brief moment, someone says something and suddenly you feel small. You want to scream, or run, or cry. You feel like a child again. That moment, confusing, disorienting, is not weakness. It's not immaturity. It's a signal. Your inner child just took the wheel. Emotional age versus chronological age. We often assume that growing older means becoming more emotionally stable. But emotional wounds don't age like we do. They stay frozen in time. You may be 52, but when your partner ignores you, and it reminds you of how your father used to emotionally disappear, it's not your 52-year-old self reacting. It's the 7-year-old who once felt invisible, now panicking inside the body of an adult. When your adult self is overwhelmed by the intensity of a reaction, there's a good chance a younger version of you has surfaced, one who never got to speak, grieve, or be held. Emotional time travel is real. You're at a dinner party. Someone corrects you in front of others. It's a small comment, even gentle, but you freeze or get defensive, or feel deeply ashamed. Why? Because part of you isn't here. It's there, back in that classroom, being humiliated. Back in your childhood home, being told to stay quiet. Back in a moment where you felt powerless. This is the invisible time travel of emotional conditioning, and unless we become aware of it, we will keep reliving old stories in new scenes, reacting to people in the present as if they were characters from our past. The child's logic never left you. The child in you didn't have the tools to understand complexity. It learned simple equations. If I cry, I'm weak. If I speak up, I get punished. If I try to be myself, I get rejected. If I'm perfect, maybe they'll stay. These beliefs don't disappear with time. They hide. They grow roots in your nervous system, and they show up in your relationships, your work, your inner critic, silently driving your behavior. The power of reparenting yourself. So what do you do when the child in you reacts? You don't shut them up. You don't shame them. You listen. Try this. The next time you feel an oversized emotional wave rising, pause and ask, how old do I feel right now? You might be surprised by the answer, and then gently ask, what did I need back then that I never got? That's not indulgence. That's integration. That's how you begin to build a bridge between who you were and who you are, so that the child in you doesn't hijack the adult, but becomes part of a healed whole. You are not broken because you feel like a child sometimes. You are healing. Every moment of emotional intensity is not proof of failure. It's a chance to return to the part of you that was once overwhelmed and finally say, I see you, I've got you now. Because now, you are the adult who can give that child what they were missing. Safety, voice, love, boundaries, truth. And from that place, real maturity begins. Not as a mask you wear, but as a truth you live. The brain that wants to save energy. The science behind automatic behavior. How the brain prefers repeating patterns even if they hurt us. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to change? You read the books. You understand the patterns. You know that reacting with anger, avoidance, or silence doesn't help, and yet you do it again. It's not because you're weak or broken. It's because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. save energy. Behind every automatic reaction, every sigh, every shutdown, every defensive word, there is a brain trying to be efficient, not wise, not happy, just efficient. The brain's first goal, survival with minimum effort. From an evolutionary point of view, your brain is not designed to make you fulfilled. It's designed to keep you alive, and it does that by favoring habits. Habits cost less energy. Familiar paths require fewer decisions. And to your brain, less energy spent. Greater safety. Even if those paths cause suffering, loneliness, or conflict, they're still predictable. And for your brain, predictable often feels safer than the unknown. This is why emotional patterns, even the painful ones, become your default, because they're the path of least resistance in your neural system. What fires together, wires together. Neuroscience has a phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. It means the more a pattern is repeated, the stronger it becomes. So if for decades you've responded to criticism with defensiveness, or intimacy with distance, or stress with silence, those neural pathways are like deep grooves in your brain. Well-worn roads your system knows how to travel, even with its eyes closed. And every time you repeat the behavior, the road gets deeper. The brain says, perfect, one less decision to make. Comfort is not the same as peace. Here's the catch. The brain often confuses familiar with safe, but just because something feels comfortable doesn't mean it's good for you. Staying silent may feel easier than speaking your truth. Avoiding conflict may feel safer than asking for what you need. Staying in an unhappy routine may feel more secure than risking something new. But in all these cases, your brain isn't leading you toward growth. It's leading you toward conservation. And over time, conserving energy can cost you your vitality, your connection, your joy. You can rewire the path, but it takes intention. The good news? The brain's plastic, it can change, but not by willpower alone. It takes repetition, awareness, and above all, presence. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose a new response, even if clumsy or slow, you are building a new neural path. At first it feels unnatural, exhausting even, but that's not failure. That's your brain burning energy to build something better. You're no longer walking the old road. You're carving a new one, step by step, moment by moment. Your brain wants to save you energy, but your soul wants more than that. It wants freedom, connection, growth, truth. And in the tension between those two, comfort and transformation, lives the most human choice of all. Stay where it's familiar, or walk into the unknown and become who you were meant to be. How to uncondition a reflex. Can we reprogram the mind? Practical and emotional steps to create new responses. By now, you know, most of your emotional reactions aren't conscious. They were shaped by past experiences, repeated patterns, and pain you didn't ask for. But here's the truth that can change everything. What was conditioned can be reconditioned. You are not doomed to repeat. You can choose again. Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly, gently, with awareness and practice, you can teach your nervous system something it's rarely heard before. You are safe now. It starts with noticing. The first and hardest step is awareness. You can't change a pattern you don't see. Begin by observing your reactions, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, what just happened inside me? What did I feel in my body? What did this remind me of? The goal isn't to control your reaction in the moment. It's to recognize it as a pattern, not as your identity. This small shift from I am angry to I'm noticing anger opens a powerful door. It creates space. And in that space you begin to find choice. Breath is your interruption key. Reflexes are fast, but breath is faster. When your system is triggered, your breath will tighten. It's automatic. So try this. The moment you notice yourself reacting, breathe deeply and slowly. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Not to suppress the emotion, but to give it room. That breath signals to your brain, I'm not in danger. I don't have to rush. I can choose how to respond. Okay, it sounds simple, But over time, this becomes a practice of emotional self-rescue. Replace, don't erase. You can't just stop an old reaction. You have to replace it with something new. The brain doesn't like empty space. It needs a new path to walk. Let's say your reflex is withdrawal when you feel criticized. Your new path might be pause, breathe. Say one true sentence about how you feel, softly. It might feel awkward, forced, unnatural. That's okay. New habits always do at first. But repetition rewires. With practice, what once felt unsafe becomes familiar, and what was once reflex becomes choice. Don't do it alone. Some reflexes were formed in isolation, and they can only be healed in connection. That's why relationships, therapy, and even honest friendships can be powerful tools for reconditioning. When someone holds space for your truth, when you're seen and not shamed in your reaction, when you feel safe enough to try a new response, and you're met with kindness, your brain takes note. Maybe the world is safer than I thought. And that's how healing happens, not just in your mind, but in your experience. Progress is messy, and that's okay. You will still react sometimes. You'll fall back into old patterns. You'll say, I knew better, and still repeat the same thing. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're rewiring. And rewiring is not linear. It's not clean. It's not quick. But every time you pause, every time you respond just a little differently, you are breaking a cycle generations old. You are not just changing your life. You're changing the legacy of reactions passed down through your family, your history, your pain. And that is no small thing. The courage to react differently. Freeing yourself from autopilot takes courage. Choosing differently means facing the fear of the unknown. There's something no one tells you about healing. It's not just about releasing pain. It's about releasing the version of yourself that pain helped you become. And that's terrifying. Because even when you know that your old reactions are hurting you, even when you're tired of being distant, angry, submissive, avoidant, defensive, that version of you once kept you safe. It got you through things no one else saw. So now choosing a different response, a calmer tone, a vulnerable truth, an honest no, may feel like betrayal. But it's not betrayal, it's evolution. The familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Your reflexes live in your body, and your body trusts what it knows. If anger helped you survive in a chaotic home, if silence kept you from being punished, if people-pleasing earned you temporary love, then anything different feels like danger, even if it's actually healthy. This is why so many people sabotage their own progress. They're not afraid of failure. They're afraid of the unknown version of themselves on the other side of healing. Every new reaction feels like a small rebellion. When you say calmly, "That hurt me," instead of yelling, "That's rebellion." When you stay present in conflict instead of shutting down, that's rebellion. When you let yourself be seen, even shaking with fear, that's rebellion. Because you're no longer letting pain speak for you. You're choosing something your body never knew was possible. That's not weakness, that's courage, and the emotional kind. And courage doesn't feel good at first. It feels exposed, awkward, unsafe. But it also feels alive. And alive is what you've been craving all along. You are building a new emotional identity. Every time you respond differently, you're teaching your system, I'm not who I was. I don't have to fight to be heard. I don't have to disappear to be loved. I don't have to perform to be safe. And slowly your identity starts to shift. You no longer see yourself as reactive or cold or broken. You begin to see yourself as someone who chooses, someone who responds with presence, not pattern. That's emotional maturity. Not perfection, not detachment, but presence with responsibility. Let yourself be proud, even when it's messy. No one sees how hard it is to pause when you're triggered. No one applauds you for breathing instead of exploding. For choosing silence as strength, not submission. For opening your heart one more time, even though the last time hurt. But these invisible victories are what shape the new you, so the next time you choose a different response, and your heart races and your body shakes, know this: you're not weak. You're reclaiming yourself. And that's what true courage looks like. Facing the unknown, not because you're fearless, but because you're done living by fear. The reflex of awakening. You are not your reaction. You are the one who chooses what comes next. Maturity as a space for transformation. There comes a moment in life, often quiet, often alone, when you finally ask, is this really who I am, or just who I became in response to everything that happened to me? It's not a dramatic moment. It's not loud. It often happens while doing something ordinary, folding clothes, driving home, walking in silence. But something in you wakes up. You begin to see your reactions not as flaws but as messages. You start to realize every sigh, every shutdown, every sudden rage was once a form of protection. But now they're not saving you. They're separating you from yourself, from others, from life. And something in you doesn't want to keep surviving. You want to start living. The space between impulse and response is sacred. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." This is the essence of awakening, realizing that your reaction is not your identity, that there is a space, maybe just a breath wide, where you can pause. And in that pause you can choose something different. You can choose kindness instead of defense, honesty instead of silence, boundaries instead of resentment, love instead of fear. Not because it's easy, but because you're ready. Maturity is not the absence of reaction, it's the presence of awareness. You will still feel anger, you will still get triggered, you will still have bad days. But awakening means you no longer let your first impulse be your final word. You don't numb it, you don't shame it. You observe it, you breathe through it, you learn from it, and over time, something beautiful happens. You stop identifying with the storm, you become the calm beneath it. You become the parent your inner child never had. This is the quiet miracle of inner work. You begin to hold space for parts of you that were once exiled, your fear, your grief, your sensitivity. You stop demanding perfection. You start offering compassion. You stop reacting like the wounded child. You start responding like the conscious adult. And that adult isn't cold, isn't hardened, isn't robotic. That adult is whole, present, honest, humble, willing to feel and willing to choose again and again. This is the real awakening. Choice. You are not your conditioned self. You are not the voice that says you always mess it up. You are not the pattern that pushes love away. You are not the reflex that shuts down in fear. You are the one who sees it now. You are the one who breathes before reacting. You are the one who can say with full authority, "This may be who I was, but it's not who I'm becoming." And that single shift from reaction to reflection is the doorway to a life of meaning, connection, and truth. Welcome to it.